Crown prosecutors told the jury that Noah Anderson and Junior Jamal Harvey and two other men drove into Regent Park on September 18, 2021, and shot at three innocent victims who were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time.
There was a gang feud occurring between what was known as the Halal Gang, which is very heavily entrenched in this part of Regent Park right here. And they were feuding with a rival gang known as the Menace Gang.
The Crown says the victims were targeted because the accused had animus towards Regent Park.
People who were not gang members, who were innocent people that were shot by Menace Gang members that came into this neighborhood and felt that they needed to shoot somebody simply because they were in halal territory.
Yo, K1, respect for that. You never said my name, but you told the story on why we put the belt to ass. You proved that what I was saying was true. We put the belt to your brother's ass.
On what block? Round is on what block? On the art block. On what block?
You know what I'm saying? Energy for Free the Gang campaign, man. Shout out my young nigga JMONEY. You know how we rock it.
In the middle of Canada's first housing project, a senseless act of violence would leave an entire community shattered and a rising rapper behind bars for life. His name was Junior Jamal Harvey, but on the streets and in his music, he went by JMONEY. Born on August 8, 2001, JMONEY grew up surrounded by the same harsh realities that shaped so many young men in Toronto's inner city. By just 17, he already had a youth record for the unauthorized possession of a restricted firearm and was placed on probation with a lifetime weapons ban. But despite that early warning, only a few years later, JMONEY would find himself at the center of one of Toronto's most shocking murders. The attack unfolded in Regent Park and was captured on surveillance cameras from beginning to end. What came next made the tragedy even harder to comprehend. Just 10 days after the murder, JMONEY returned to the studio with one of his co-accused and recorded a drill track dissing the same neighborhood where the shooting took place. The song, later titled Peppered, bragged about catching victims lacking, firing headshots, and leaving them dead on arrival. The lyrics matched the murder scene in chilling detail. To investigators, it wasn't just rap, it was evidence. And to the streets, it was self-snitching at its finest, a bold display of ego that turned real-life violence into a song for clout. JMONEY is an Alexandra Park-bred rapper representing Menace Gang, a downtown collective known for producing some of Toronto's most recognizable street artists and anthems. But what started as a local rap movement quickly became tied to a much larger and bloodier legacy. Behind the beats was a long-running feud that had been growing for over a decade. Alexandra Park and Regent Park, two downtown housing projects separated by less than 5 kilometers, had become locked in one of Toronto's most deadliest rivalries.
There was a gang feud occurring between what was known as the Halal Gang, which is very heavily entrenched in this part of Regent Park right here. And they were feuding with a rival gang known as the Menace Gang.
What began as territorial disputes and street-level grudges slowly evolved into an all-out war fought through violence and rap. Every diss track and every shooting fed into a cycle that blurred the line between music and murder. For the youth coming up in these neighborhoods, picking a side wasn't just about where you lived, it was about who you stood with and who you might die for. The earliest roots of the rivalry between Regent Park and Alexandra Park trace back to two influential downtown Toronto crews, the Asian Assassins and Chin Pack. The Asian Assassins were based around Chinatown and Alexandra Park, made up mostly of young men of Vietnamese, Chinese, and Southeast Asian descent who grew up in the area's social housing blocks. They built their reputation through drug and firearms trafficking, along with a series of violent robberies that quickly drew the attention of law enforcement. Police investigations during the late 2000s revealed that some of their operations overlapped with organized crime groups linked to the Asian triads, particularly in gun smuggling and street-level drug networks that stretched across the greater Toronto area. Their rivals, Chin Pack, were a younger Asian-Canadian crew operating out of Regent Park in the East End corridor. Initially small and localized, they became one of the first organized groups from Regent Park to directly challenge the Assassins' growing influence downtown. According to investigators, the feud ignited in 2011 when a fight broke out inside the Old Don jail between a Chin Pack member and a Project Original member, a known ally of the Asian Assassins. From that moment, retaliation followed retaliation, spilling across Toronto and even into York Region. Throughout the 2010s, the feud between these downtown crews left a trail of targeted killings and headline-grabbing violence. On March 30th, 2013, Michael Nguyen, a 23-year-old alleged member of the Asian Assassins, was gunned down execution-style in the parking lot of Yorkdale Mall. A murder that investigators later confirmed was part of the ongoing gang conflict.
Both victims are known members of a violent Toronto street gang called the Asian Assassins.
CBC first reported on Monday that 23-year-old Michael Nguyen was one of the leaders. He and a 24-year-old man who survived the shooting were ambushed Saturday night. They were leaving Yorkdale Mall together when shots were fired.
Just weeks later, another high-profile shooting outside Vai Lounge in North York claimed the life of Tony Nguyen, who police also linked to the assassins. The bloodshed continued on February 4th, 2014, when Peter Nguyen, believed to be a rising leader within the Asian Assassins, was ambushed and shot multiple times after his killers allegedly tracked his movements using a hidden GPS device. Police later confirmed that his murder was retaliation for the earlier execution of Michael Nguyen, proving that the feud had evolved into a calculated cycle of revenge. The violence soon claimed more lives. On March 25, 2014, 64-year-old Nak No was shot multiple times after answering the door of his Symington Avenue home. He died in his own doorway while his wife and another family member stood helpless inside. Toronto police later confirmed that Nak's son, Tan Tien No, was a rising Chin Pac member, a detail that suggested the gunman used his father as payback in the ongoing war. 4 years later, the cycle of violence returned once again. In March 2018, Tan Tien himself was killed in a shooting outside a North York bowling alley. Inside the building, an innocent woman, a bystander with no ties to gang activity, was also fatally struck, dying amid chaos she had no part in.
Court documents obtained by Global News suggest No was involved with organized crime. It's believed he was associated with Chin Pac, a gang that's been around in Toronto since the early 2000s.
This is not a random killing, it is targeted.
No's own father was the victim of a violent attack on March 25, 2014. He was shot multiple times after he opened the front door of his Symington Avenue home.
At this point, it was clear the feud between the Asian Assassins and Chin Pac had spiraled far beyond street crews, as the violence had reached whole families and everyday civilians. By the spring of 2014, police had linked 11 homicides and even more shootings to the long-running gang war between Chin Pac and the Asian Assassins. What began as personal disputes and territorial standoffs had evolved into one of Toronto's earliest and deadliest project wars. Entire communities were being caught in the crossfire, and detectives feared more bodies would fall if they didn't act fast. In May 2014, law enforcement launched Project RX and Project Battery, two large-scale anti-gang operations targeting Alexandra Park's Asian Assassins and Regent Park's Chin Pac and Sick Thugs. The raids led to over 50 arrests and the seizure of dozens of guns, drugs, and large amounts of cash. But even with key players locked up and guns taken off the street, the violence didn't disappear, it evolved. Younger generations watched older members fall to bullets in prison cells, and instead of backing away, they picked up the torch. By the mid-2010s, the long-standing feud between Alexandra Park and Regent Park had given rise to a new wave of rival crews. From Alexandra Park came Menace Gang, a younger group connected to the neighborhood's earlier street politics. Notable rappers include K-Money, Casper, JMONEY, and Rolex Hami, whose music would later capture the gritty realities of life in Alexandra Park. 5 kilometers away in Regent Park, the Halal Gang began to emerge, a collective made up of artists such as Smoke Dogg, Moji, and Puffy L's, whose musical talent helped put Toronto's underground rap scene on the map. While the older generation's feud was fought in back alleys and housing blocks, this new wave brought the conflict into the spotlight by using music and social media. The tension between Alexandra Park and Regent Park took a darker turn after an incident that would ignite a wave of public humiliation and retaliation. Smoke Dogg, one of Halal Gang's rising rap stars at the time, was robbed of his chain. That same chain was later sold to Menace Gang rapper Vanali Stacks, who brazenly featured it in the music video for his diss track, Halal Meat. This was a move that many saw as a direct declaration of war between Alexandra and Regent Park affiliates.
You niggas only chillin' by the robber, cause I got knocked with my llama, car goes around like it's karma, Who got your block hotter than a sauna, nigga? Who?
A little over a year later, on May 28, 2018, the feud erupted from music into real-world violence. JMONEY and Casper were involved in a daytime shooting in Regent Park, where they attempted to target an individual believed to be affiliated with Halal Gang after spotting him walking through the neighborhood. The confrontation quickly spiraled out of control, leading to a high-speed police chase through downtown Toronto that ended with their arrest and a flood of media attention. According to court records, their homes, and even their parents' homes, were shot at multiple times for nearly a week straight prior to the shooting. In response, the brothers allegedly spun through Regent Park while high on Xanax, continuing the cycle of violence that had haunted both neighborhoods for over a decade. Just a month later, on June 29th, Smoke Dawg released his now iconic Fountain freestyle. The video, filmed in the middle of Alexandra Park, was a blatant diss. By walking through the rival neighborhood on camera, Smoke Dawg was making a statement. He could move through enemy territory without fear. What might have looked like another freestyle to outsiders was actually a bold act of provocation, reinforcing how deeply music and street politics had become intertwined in Toronto's ongoing project wars. But the online warfare didn't stop there. Menace gang member Rolex Hami took to social media, publicly declaring war on Regent Park and urging his 3,000 followers to shoot everybody in Regent. That phrase would soon become infamous, shortened into the acronym SERP, which he turned into the name SERP Gang, a phrase he often shouted in his tracks. A week after making the threats, Rolex made news headlines and was subject to a Canada-wide warrant facing a single charge, threatening death. Even though the feud had gone digital, the violence didn't stop, because just 3 years later it erupted again when 4 masked gunmen fired 59 shots in Regent Park, killing a beloved community worker and leaving an entire city in shock. It was Saturday, September 18, 2021. Thane Murray, a beloved Regent Park community worker and mentor, was spending the evening with 2 childhood friends, Tony and Alan. They were just sitting at the edge of a Regent Park parking lot, talking and enjoying the early autumn air. Then, at around 8:50 p.m., 4 masked gunmen walked in from Gerrard Street. Without warning, they opened fire. The group unleashed a hailstorm of bullets, 59 rounds in total. Murray was hit 14 times, in the head, chest, lungs, and liver. He died instantly. His 2 friends were also struck. Alan was shot 9 times, left in a coma for 3 weeks. Tony was hit in the foot as he ran for his life. None of them were involved in gangs. None of them had enemies. They were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. The gunfire was so intense that it was captured on CCTV blocks away, where the sounds of dozens of rapid shots echoed through the night, followed by sirens. In the wake of Thane Murray's death, many in Toronto began questioning whether the violence consuming the city had reached a point of no return. Just 11 days before Thane's killing, another tragedy had shaken the community, the September 7, 2021 murder of Samuel Bokai, a University of Toronto graduate and community leader from the Jane and Finch area. Sam wasn't part of the streets. He was trying to lead others away from them, teaching trades and showing young men there was a better path. But even his positivity couldn't shield him from the chaos spreading through the city. Not long after his death, Toronto rapper Top 5 went live on Instagram, mocking Bokai's passing, saying, "I'm smoking Sam." Even more disturbing, someone in the comments section of that live stream predicted Thane Murray's murder days before it happened.
Yo, you smoking Sam?
That's a ha.
Whatever I'm smoking on, 100 smoking on. I haven't lost no stepper homies. You know what I mean? All my homies that died were good guys. You know what I mean?
I'm not gonna lie, Sam.
The moment revealed just how far the city had fallen. Community builders were becoming targets, and social media had turned into a stage for disrespect and prophecy in Toronto's ongoing cycle of violence. The death of Thane Murray sent shockwaves through Regent Park. Residents and co-workers described him as the light in the community who dedicated himself to giving young people purpose and opportunity. After his murder, the Regent Park Community Center, where he worked, shut down several youth programs that he had personally run. Parents and teens said they felt unsafe, and many felt that Murray's death had undone years of progress made through the area's redevelopment. The Crown later described the killing as having a ripple effect, devastating not only his family and friends, but the entire neighborhood's sense of safety and hope. Police said the community had been left reeling by the murder of a man who tried to do everything right. Just weeks after the Regent Park execution, the violence spread back across downtown. On the evening of October 21, 2021, gunfire broke out near Vanalley Walk and Napanee Court, in the heart of Alexandra Park, the same neighborhood tied to Menace Gang. When officers arrived, they found a man and a woman suffering from gunshot wounds. Both were rushed to hospital in serious condition. Fortunately, they survived. Investigators later confirmed that the two victims were innocent bystanders, caught in the crossfire of what police and locals suspected was a retaliatory shooting for the murder of Thane Murray. Mere hours following the shooting, Menace Gang member Jabril Elmi took to Instagram to address the shooting, not with remorse, but with mockery. In a series of posts, he wrote, "They lucky they never bumped into Mr. Walk Through Menace." He also taunted those behind the shooting, writing, "These hit up the 60-year-old hood gardener. What did the old people do to these nerds?" In another post, he deflected blame from himself, saying, "People are telling me this is my fault. How is this my fault? I'm out here giving back to the community and the old folks." As the violence was escalating, investigators began piecing together what had really happened that night and how far-reaching the fallout would become. Detectives worked around the clock, reviewing surveillance footage, tracing vehicle rental records, and mapping phone pings. What they uncovered pointed to a level of planning and coordination rarely seen in Toronto shootings. Noah Anderson, a Menace Gang member, had orchestrated key parts of the hit. He rented the gray Nissan Altima that was used to transport the shooters to and from the scene and booked a room at the Chelsea Hotel, using it both as a staging area and as a convenient cover story, later claiming it was for a party. Alongside Anderson were three other men, JMONEY, Jabril Elmi, and Regent Angus Campbell, who went by RD. Before leaving for Regent Park, the group switched the Altima's license plates, changed into dark clothing, and powered off their phones to avoid detection. After unleashing 59 bullets into a group of unsuspecting men, they returned to McGill Street, repeating the same process in reverse, switching plates, changing outfits, and turning their phones back on once they were clear of the area. But the biggest break in the investigation didn't come from the streets, it came from the studio. On September 27th, just 9 days after the shooting, detectives searching Anderson's phone found the first draft of a new drill track, titled Peppered. The track featured 4 artists tied to Menace Gang. Mr. Walkthrough, whose real name is Noah Anderson, JMONEY, identified as Junior Jamal Harvey, RD, known as Regent Angus Campbell, and Mr. Wallahi, identified as Jabril Elmi. The lyrics weren't just music, they were a confession in disguise. The song bragged about Regent Parker's getting peppered, headshots, he had a seizure, and leaving him dead on arrival, eerily echoing the real details of Murray's death. The disrespect didn't stop with Peppered. Not long after his release from prison for the 2018 Regent Park shooting and police chase, K-Money released a diss track titled Open Mic. In the track, K-Money took aim at several deceased Regent Park-bred rappers and their affiliates, including Thane, going as far as to mock their dead mothers, a move many saw as crossing every line of street and moral code.
Ceiling TBC said crazy Jermaine. Feel on money, I'm smoking on thing. 50 Rocky, Smokey, Rondo. Like fucking, I'm rolling up Arnold. Talking on Primo, we kill you tomorrow. Get the drop, I'm calling up Cairo. 911, nigga, you better die. I'm smoking on ops, I ain't smoking a child. How the fuck?
The track wasn't just a shot at rival blocks, it was a direct provocation aimed at reopening old wounds in a city still reeling from years of back-and-forth bloodshed. The night after the rough draft for Peppered was made, GPS and rideshare data confirmed Anderson, RD, and JMONEY were together at a recording studio in Woodbridge, where they spent the night recording the final product. After leaving, they ordered a lift back to JMONEY's home. The following day, an audio file titled Mr. Walkthrough, RD, JMONEY, Pep.mp3 was sent from Anderson's phone to JMONEY's. The discovery of Peppered became the turning point in the investigation, the moment when police could finally connect music to murder. With the lyrics, GPS data, hotel bookings, and car records all lining up, detectives had enough evidence to identify their suspects and track their movements after the shooting. But what came next only strengthened their suspicions. Police discovered a July 2021 text exchange between Noah Anderson and an unidentified person where he bragged about the authenticity of his lyrics, replying no cap when the other contact wrote, "We don't cap rap." On his phone, investigators later found photos of him posing with guns, a handgun tucked into his waistband, a rifle resting against his head, along with stacks of cash and a video of himself masked with a devil emoji, captioned "Don't walk in the park, Regent Park." It was a chilling taunt referencing the same neighborhood where Thane Murray had been murdered. But after the murder, that same bravado vanished. As investigators began closing in, Anderson went on the run, changing his phone number, cutting off contact with his family, and moving out west under a false name. His family thought he was living with his mother, but text messages told a different story. On September 26, 2021, his stepmother messaged, "It's not very respectful to be so evasive," and by December she was still pleading, "Noah, what's going on with you these days? We haven't seen you in 3 months." When police finally located him on December 13, 2021, Anderson was arrested and found carrying fake identification linked to that alias. Just 1 day later, on December 14th, JMONEY was also taken into custody. Both men were charged with 1 count of first-degree murder for the death of Thane and 2 counts of attempted murder for shooting Alan and Tony. 2 of their alleged accomplices, however, remained at large. Jabriel Elmi disappeared completely, his name later appearing on Canada's Bolo Most Wanted list at number 24, along with a $50,000 reward for information leading to his capture. The manhunt stretched across the country until 2025, when Saskatoon police finally arrested him in dramatic fashion on a Canada-wide warrant. On January 31, 2025, police across Canada brought down a sprawling drug and gun trafficking network that stretched from Toronto to Saskatchewan, and even as far as Newfoundland and the Yukon. The 4-month-long investigation, dubbed Project Low-Key, was led by the Winnipeg Police Service in partnership with several other agencies. Authorities executed 9 coordinated raids on January 31st, targeting properties across multiple provinces. The operation resulted in 9 arrests and the seizure of a massive cache of weapons and narcotics. Among those arrested was Jabriel Elmi. Police said Elmi's ability to remain at large for years, while allegedly participating in a trans-provincial organized crime network, showed the sophistication and reach of the group. Investigators allege the network transported drugs from Toronto to Winnipeg using cars, chartered buses, boats, trains, parcel couriers, and commercial airlines, often relying on fake IDs to move undetected. Once in Manitoba, the drugs were allegedly distributed in Winnipeg and through First Nation communities such as Sandy Bay. Police believe Sandy Bay served as a key distribution hub, where shipments were broken down and sent north. In total, the arrests and seizures under Project Low-Key marked one of the largest interprovincial drug trafficking takedowns in recent Canadian history and brought an abrupt end to Elmi's time on the run. As of the making of this video, the 4th suspect, Regent Angus Campbell, is still on the run, considered armed and dangerous. The arrests of Noah Anderson, JMONEY, and Jabriel Elmi marked the start of one of Toronto's most high-profile murder trials, one that would expose how music and long-standing neighborhood rivalries culminated in a brutal act of revenge. In April 2025, after nearly 3 years of anticipation, the murder trial finally began. Prosecutors laid out a chilling timeline of precision and planning, showing how the 4 accused had orchestrated every move leading up to the Regent Park shooting. They revealed that Noah Anderson had rented the gray Nissan Altima used in the attack, while the group switched its license plates just before heading into the neighborhood. Surveillance evidence also showed them changing clothes in a nearby alley both before and after the shooting. Meanwhile, forensic analysis confirmed that their cell phones were powered off throughout the operation and only turned back on once they had returned to safety. They had even booked a room at the Chelsea Hotel, using the guise of a party as their cover for being downtown that night. The Crown argued that the crime wasn't just premeditated, it was performed. Within days, the shooters allegedly immortalized the murder in a drill track titled Peppered, boasting about Regent Park getting peppered and leaving victims DOA. A rap expert, Dr. Evans, testified that while drill music often relies on exaggeration, the detail and timing in Peppered were far too specific to dismiss as fiction, suggesting the song served as both a confession and a trophy for the killers. At the center of the trial was JMONEY. He was just 20 years old when the shooting happened. Defense counsel tried to argue that he had a difficult upbringing, claiming he was traumatized when his father was diagnosed with brain cancer in 2012 and required surgery and chemotherapy. The defense also noted his parents, sister, and cousin remained supportive and attended trial when their work schedules permitted. But the court found no connection between that background and the crime. The level of planning and the sheer disregard for human life left the judge with only one option. By July 2025, both Anderson and Harvey were found guilty. The sentence was automatic, life in prison with no parole eligibility for 25 years, plus concurrent life terms for the 2 attempted murders. The judge described the attack as an execution and pointed out that 59 shots were fired in public, near a neighborhood pool area, with significant collateral harm to the community. During sentencing, 17 victim impact statements were read, including from the victim's mother, who said she still couldn't bear to look at his photo, and his father, who called his son his best friend. One youth worker described the loss of Murray as a wake-up call for the community. If Thane was a victim, no one is safe. JMONEY and Noah Anderson will now spend the majority of their lives behind bars. Meanwhile, Regent Angus Campbell remains on the run, and Jabriel Elmi's trial has yet to begin, proof that even years later, the story of Regent Park's deadliest feud is still not over.